The relay room wasn't supposed to have anyone in it. That was the first thing I noticed when I badged through the service door with my toolkit under my arm and the work order already half forgotten in my back pocket. The Valori consulate's translation arrays had been cycling a 7 Hz drift for 11 days, long enough that the diplomatic feeds were warping at the edges and someone had finally filed a formal complaint with station maintenance. That someone was me, technically. I'd flagged it twice, both times politely ignored. Third time I put it in writing, and now here I was at 0600 station time, the corridor still dim, the consulate staff not yet arrived, the relay room technically mine for the morning. Except she was sitting in the corner. She had folded herself into the gap between the secondary array housing and the far wall, knees drawn up, a small data slate balanced on them. She wasn't hiding, exactly. She simply occupied the space the way water occupies the low part of a container, like she'd been finding the path of least resistance for a very long time. She looked up when the door opened. Dark, reflective eyes, the kind that held light rather than reflected it. Soft grey lavender skin, close-cropped silver hair, a Valori formal robe that was slightly too large for her, as if it had belonged to someone else. I said, "Morning. I've got a work order on the relay stack. I'll try to keep the noise down." She looked at me the way people look when they expect to be told to leave. I set my toolkit on the main service bench and pulled up the array schematic on the wall panel. She didn't move. I didn't ask her to. I had a drift to find and a morning to get through, and she wasn't in my way. It took me about 4 minutes to locate the primary oscillation fault, a coupling seal on the third harmonic emitter, degraded unevenly, probably from the consulate's own resonance ceremonies compressing the array past its rated tolerance. The Valori used their comms equipment in ways human engineers hadn't designed for. Not wrong, exactly. Just different. I was pulling the housing panel when the array cycled its automated test tone. It did this every 12 minutes, a low pulse in the Valori harmonic register, something between a chord and a pressure wave. Most humans felt it as a faint buzz in the back teeth. I'd gotten used to it after 3 months on the station. She flinched. Not dramatically. A small, controlled thing, shoulders drawing in, jaw tightening for just a moment before she smoothed it back out. She'd done it before. You could tell by how practiced the smoothing was. I looked at the coupling seal in my hand. I said, "Does that bother you?" The test tone. She went very still. "I can disable the automated cycle while I'm in here," I said. "I have to run my own calibration sequence anyway. The 12-minute pulse will just interfere." She said, after a moment, "You can do that." "Sure." I pulled up the cycle controls and suspended it. The room went quieter. Not silent, the arrays still hummed at their base frequency, but the pulse was gone. Better. She considered the question as if it had been asked in a foreign language, and she was running it through a second translation. "Yes," she said. "Thank you." I went back to the coupling seal. I'm not good at silence for long. That's an honest thing about me, not a virtue. I work better when my mouth is running slightly ahead of my brain, just enough that my hands can get on with things without supervision. I said, still working, "I haven't seen you in the consulate before. Most of the staff are on the upper floors." "I'm not staff," she said. "Ah." I fitted the new coupling seal into the housing. "Visitor." "I am Sereth Voon, second daughter of succession Councillor Voon Salif." I looked up from the panel. She was watching me with that same quality of attention, alert, careful, waiting for a specific thing to happen. The kind of waiting that comes from a lot of experience of what happens next. I said, "Marcus Hale, Station Maintenance, Diplomatic Services Division." I went back to the panel. "Is the relay room a good place to be in the mornings, generally? I'm asking because I might need to come back in here." Something changed in her face. It took me a moment to understand it was surprise. "It's the one room where no one from the delegation comes," she said. "The harmonic arrays are. They're not suited to my presence. Or so I've been told." I looked at the arrays, then at her. The test tone. "You flinch." "I don't produce harmonic resonance," she said, and her voice was careful and flat in the way that a person's voice goes flat when they've said something painful so many times it's lost the ability to hurt them out loud. Among the Valori, resonance it is not simply a matter of sound. It is recognition. Standing. I was assessed at the age of 11 and found to be without harmonic voice. Unvoiced. She said the word the way you'd say the name of a country you'd been deported from. The succession passed to my younger sister. The formal title was withdrawn. I accompany the delegation because my father believes in keeping me visible enough to be useful and quiet enough not to be noticed. She was watching me again. Waiting. I said, "That sounds exhausting." She blinked. "The managing of it," I said. "The calculation of how visible to be. That takes a lot of work." I had the housing panel closed and was moving to the primary emitter calibration. "You're doing it right now, actually. Even talking to me." A long pause. "You're very direct for a maintenance technician." "I've been told." I pulled up the calibration interface. Okay, I need to run a signal test through the relay stack. The Valori harmonic register is part of it, which is why the test tone runs, but I'm going to recalibrate the array to Earth standard first and work backward from there. It'll be quieter, and whatever I find will be easier to isolate. I keyed in the Earth standard frequency baseline. The array shifted. I felt it more than heard it, a change in the quality of the room's hum, like a window had been opened. The Valori harmonic undertone dropped out and what remained was something cleaner, flatter, human. "All right," I said. "I need a voice test on the return channel, just to confirm the relay's receiving properly." "Would you?" I stopped. Most of the consulate staff wouldn't do it. They considered the array beneath them when it was in service mode. "Actually, never mind. I can loop a recording." "I'll do it," she said. She stood up from her corner and crossed to the relay terminal. She was taller than I'd realized. The robe still looked borrowed. She looked at the input panel and then at me. "Just speak," I said. "Anything. The system's listening for input signal, not content." She said, in Valori, something short and quiet. Her voice came back through the relay speakers. Full. Clear. No drift, no compression, no distortion at the edges. The Earth standard array picked it up clean and returned it clean, and in the silence of that small maintenance room her voice sounded like something that had been kept in a narrow container for a long time and had just been poured into a larger one. She stood very still. I checked the calibration readout. That's a clean signal. No phase drift, full resonance on return. I looked up. System works fine. The fault was in the coupling seal, not the array's receive capacity. She wasn't looking at the panel. "Say something else," I said. "I need 3 samples for the log." She said something else. And then a third time. Each time her voice came back through the speakers with that same clarity, and each time she went a little more still, as if she were adding weight to herself, pressing down through the floor. When I stopped the test sequence, she said, very quietly, "Is that what I sound like?" "That's what you sound like," I said. She touched the edge of the relay terminal with 2 fingers, not pressing anything, just resting them there, the way a person touches something they want to be certain is real. "The Valori arrays," she stopped. "When I speak near a harmonic emitter, my voice drops below the receivable register. The arrays aren't calibrated to receive non-resonant input. It comes back as noise. The technicians told me it was a matter of the signal being too weak, too small." I'd worked on Valori harmonic equipment for 3 months. I understood, now, what she was describing. The arrays were tuned to a specific resonant bandwidth that Valori with full harmonic expression occupied naturally. If you didn't produce that resonance, the system didn't register you as a valid input source. It would hear you. It just wouldn't listen. I looked at the readout, at the 3 clean waveforms sitting in the log. "Your voice isn't too small," I said. "Their calibration range is too narrow." She looked at me for a long time. Not the careful waiting look, something else. Something that hadn't decided yet what it was. The door opened. He was a senior member of the delegation. I'd seen him in the upper corridor twice, a tall Valori male in formal grey, the kind of person who moved through a room as if the room had been arranged to accommodate him. He saw Sereth and something shifted in his face, a very brief recalculation. "Sereth Voon," he said. "The councillor's review session begins in 40 minutes. You are expected to attend." She began to turn. I said, "I need her for another 10 minutes." He looked at me. The look said several things, none of them polite, most of them accurate about the power differential in the room. "The relay array is still in active calibration," I said. "I need a local voice input to run the final sequence. She's been assisting. 40 minutes is fine. I'll have her up to you before the session starts. This was not, strictly speaking, true. I needed one more voice sample and then I needed to write my log and pack my kit and be somewhere else. But I'd said it before I'd decided to say it, and I didn't unsay it. He looked at the array panels, at the equipment spread across the service bench, at me, a maintenance worker in a station-issue grey jacket with grease on his left cuff. He looked at Seraph. 10 minutes, he said, and left. The door closed. She looked at me. Why did you do that? I picked up my calibration tool. Because you were in the middle of something. I wasn't doing anything. You were listening to your own voice, I said. That seemed like something. She was quiet for a moment. The arrays hummed. Outside the door, I could hear the consulate beginning to come alive. Footsteps in the upper corridor, the distant exchange of formal Valori tones. The assessment, she said. When I was 11. They ran the harmonic test 3 times. Each time my voice came back as noise. My father stood in the room and said nothing. My sister was 8 and already resonant, and everyone in the room knew the succession had already moved. I'm sorry, I said. I've made peace with it, she said, which was what a person says when they haven't and don't expect to. I pulled up the relay log and tagged the 3 voice samples. Seraph Voon, supplemental calibration input, Earth Standard Frequency Baseline, Corthen Station Maintenance Record 7-1194. Clear signal. Full resonance return. These are in the station maintenance log now, I said. Not going anywhere. They'll be here. She looked at the panel. The Valori arrays aren't going to suddenly recalibrate to your register, I said. I can't fix that from a maintenance order. But this room runs on Earth Standard equipment whenever I'm in here, and I'm in here every 11 days or so chasing that drift. If you wanted somewhere to be in the mornings when the delegation's in session. I didn't finish the sentence. She said, you'd let me sit in your relay room. It's the station's relay room. I just have the work order. A very small thing happened at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. The motion a smile makes before it decides whether to arrive. She crossed back to her corner, picked up her data slate, and straightened the borrowed robe. I'll go up to the session, she said. My father expects me to be visible and quiet. She paused at the door. But I heard myself. Just now. I want you to know that I heard it. I know, I said. Thank you, Marcus Hale. She went out the door and up toward the council floors. I stood in the relay room with 3 clean waveforms in the maintenance log and the quiet hum of Earth Standard equipment around me, and I didn't move for a moment longer than I needed to. Then I wrote my log entry, packed my kit, and scheduled my next return visit to Corthen Station's Valori Consulate relay room for 10 days out instead of 11. Some calibrations, I'd learned, were worth keeping current.